Good afternoon to all the attendees in Asia, and good morning to the attendees in Europe. We are starting here with quite a select crowd. The number of attendees is still quite small, and as such I would like to start with a little introduction before I give the word to Victoria Buttigieg of Emerald. My name is Dennis Boers, Sea Change Team Leader, and I would like to welcome you again to the 6th Sea Change webinar, and it's the 3rd webinar in our 2012 series. Welcome to all of you as attendees, and also a warm welcome to our presenter, Ms. Victoria Buttigieg of Emerald Group Publishing Limited, who I will introduce in just a moment. And Victoria is joined today by her colleague, Ms. Emma Stevenson, who I also will introduce in a moment from now. Also welcome to Ms. Sang-Li Kang, who is part of the panel and who works for Sea Change on the development of webinars. Some of the attendees this afternoon are already Sea Change members and already know about us. For those who are new to Sea Change, I would like to explain that we are a community of practice with currently 185 members, and we develop a culture of high quality and rigorous M&E frameworks, approaches and methodologies for climate change responses and interventions in Southeast Asia and beyond. Having said that, this webinar is not at all about monitoring and evaluation, nor will we talk about climate change interventions. This webinar will focus solely on what it takes to publicize your work. Webinars are one way in which Sea Change is sharing knowledge to improve M&E practices related to climate change interventions. And next to webinars, we also send out a weekly newsletter, maintain a resource library, and we also want to support our members in speaking engagements at conferences. And through this webinar, we also want to support our members in publishing their work. And this webinar is as such aimed at those who are considering to publish their professional experiences. For more information on Sea Change, I'd like to guide you to our website, which is www.seachangecup.org. A little bit on logistics for this webinar session. The webinar presentation will take about 40 minutes, after which there will be time for questions and answers. You can type your questions in the question field in the software, after which we will present them to our presenter, Ms. Victoria Buttigieg, and her colleague Emma Stevenson. Or you can raise your hand and ask the question verbally. And on the next slide I will show you where you find the question fields and the hand raising buttons. Any questions that have not been answered during the 30-minute Q&A session will be answered offline and published on our website, together with a recording of the webinar. This is the point where you will find the raise hand icon, and that's the field where you can type your questions. And any questions, as said, that have not been answered will be answered offline and later on published on our website. If your question wasn't answered, then please type it in the question window and we will make sure in the end that it gets answered. As a last part of this introduction, let me now introduce to you our presenters of today, Ms. Victoria Buttigieg of Emerald Group Publishing Limited. And Emerald Group Publishing has become the world's leading scholarly publisher of journals and books in business and management, with a strong and growing presence in social sciences and emerging markets. Victoria Buttigieg will share her experience and expertise as the publisher of the Emerald Emerging Markets Case Studies collection, and she will provide insight on what makes a good learning case and teaching note, the common mistakes to avoid, and information and tips to support you through the publishing process. The case study is the ideal vehicle for inter-organisational learning and a great way to knowledge share with your peers. In addition, With climate change intervention being such a pertinent topic for today's university seminar room, your experiences could translate into very valuable educational resources for the practitioners of tomorrow. Ms. Victoria Buttigieg has worked on the launch and development of regionally focused titles at Emerald Group Publishing since 2008. As part of her role, Victoria has delivered presentations about publishing in universities all around the world and provided support to prospective authors and editors. Any questions about Emerald Emerging Markets case studies are welcome at her email address that you see here on the screen. Our second presenter for today, Ms. Emma Stevenson, is part of the external relations team at Emerald. She manages the awards program, which includes a number of case writing competitions, and also manages the Guide to Getting Published program. Part of her role is ensuring that potential authors receive the support and information that they need to help them in their goal to share their ideas and to get published. And if you would have any questions about the awards program or the Guide to Getting Published program, then please contact Emma on the email that you see in the presentation right here. This was my introduction, and I would like to hand over now to Victoria and Emma for their presentation. Just so you know, Victoria, I now see the writing case studies for publication in the PowerPoint field.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear my voice?
Perfectly well.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for your kind introduction, Dennis. Emma and I are very happy to be here. And we are glad that you could make it. We realize that it's the evening for a lot of you, and we're happy that you could spend some time with us for this presentation about writing case studies for publication. As Dennis said, we see case studies as the ideal vehicle for knowledge sharing and training, and that might be very relevant to many of you who are involved with sea change. Others might also be involved with teaching at universities, and of course case studies are used increasingly as educational resources in those settings. So we hope that you'll find this useful today. So okay, this has popped up. Dennis, please let me know if the sound quality is not good.
No, the sound quality is fine.
Can do. Okay, okay, that's fine. Okay, so here's what we will be covering in this presentation. We'll start off with the key steps that you need to keep in mind when you're preparing your case study for publication. We'll have a brief look at the differences between teaching or learning cases and research cases. We'll cover the writing and structuring of a case. We'll look at what makes a good case and common mistakes that we see authors make in their submissions. We'll spend some time on copyright and plagiarism, which are major concerns for publishers. And we'll look at the process that your manuscript takes after submission. We will also point you towards some resources that you might find useful. What we won't be covering today is the case study research method. We won't be looking at that in any detail. we're more concerned here with the actual preparation of the finished manuscript for publication, rather than the background research that goes on to actually make that a reality. We will be giving some tips, though, which might help you with the research side of it. So just a bit of a picture there to show you our view on a summer's day from our offices. Emerald is based in the UK in terms of its headquarters, but it has offices all over the world, as you can see there. We're becoming an international publisher very quickly. And apart from our journals and books, we also publish case studies, and we're quite happy with our newest collection, which focuses on emerging markets. We have over 150 peer-reviewed teaching cases in this collection, and we have partnered with management development organizations, both regionally and internationally, to actually put this collection together. It's being well received, both by users and also by the authors who are writing for us. So this might be something you could consider when you're looking for publishing outlets. So let's start with the key steps that we need to keep in mind when we're preparing a case study for publication. The first point is to start with the end in mind. So what are the learning or research objectives that you are setting out to work on and to communicate to your audience? It's very important then during the initial observation stage, when you're first getting to know the organization or the community that you will be writing about. It's important to identify the case lead. The case lead will be your main point of contact at the organization or within the community, and they will probably be the protagonist in your case study. They will be able to point you towards documents, towards other people, resources generally that you would need to access. And you will then need to dig deeper to find out whether you will be able to access what you need. Also, will you be able to access everything that you need? Obviously, you want to seek out as much information and as full a picture as possible when you're doing your research. Then there's the collection, the information collection stage, the writing up stage, and getting permission to publish. Now, this very much depends on the relationship that you would have built with the organization or the community that you're writing about. So that will determine whether they are happy for you to publish what you have written. And unless we receive permission, we cannot then publish your work unless it is disguised. So this is a very important point to keep in mind. Authors sometimes send us amazing manuscripts that we would really love to publish, and we know would help students to get involved and stimulated in important discussions. We know that it would be a good resource for training. But if we don't have permission from the organization that's being written about to publish it, then unfortunately we can't take it. We would then ask the author to disguise that case, and only if we are convinced that it is sufficiently disguised do we then go on to publish it. The teaching notes are an important point as well, and they make or break your case study. They make it an effective educational or training tool or not. So we'll talk a bit more about them in a little while. So that's just a very brief description of the differences really between teaching and learning cases and research cases. So as we see it, and probably as many of you see it, the teaching or learning case is an educational tool or a training tool, a knowledge sharing tool, which has a strong storyline aimed at getting a group involved in an important and pertinent question. And it also stimulates dialogue, it stimulates discussion, it includes an ambiguous situation with many potential outcomes. This will help students engage with what it is really like to make real-life decisions in all their messiness. With research cases, they are more of an in-depth look at a particular situation, event, or entity, and they are generally seen to be the remit of qualitative research associated with ethnography, field study, participant observation. And generally they are considered to inform quantitative research findings and also point towards areas which need more quantitative analysis. Hello? Okay. Sorry, there was a bit of a glitch there. I hope you can still hear me.
Yes, it's better now.
Okay, that's good. In both cases, we would recommend that the case author uses a case study protocol after Robert K. Yin and his book on case research methodology. He advises that this plan be put together, the case study protocol, which identifies the objective of the case study, which considers the points that the investigators are going to look at. What kind of questions are they going to ask? What kind of information do they need? And also looks at what background research has already been completed about this particular issue. The case study protocol also gives authors an idea of how they're going to plan out their writing. So it's good practice to do that. In both cases, you will need to collect all the relevant information and you will need to make sure it's correct and it's not just one side of the story. You don't want the PR message, you want the truth. So that is quite difficult to come by sometimes, and again depends on your relationship with the organization or the community. Permission letters, very important, as we've already mentioned. Now, before you actually embark on your project, you might want to consider partnering with another author. And this might be especially beneficial if you're new to the publishing field. You might want to partner with someone who has similar research interests, someone you've met at a conference, at an event, someone you work with already, someone who is senior to you and who could perhaps guide you. There are a few things to consider when you are preparing a joint piece of writing. You need to make sure that the manuscript does read as one voice, and also don't split the work up in such a way that you're both doing the same thing. Exploit your individual strengths so that you make the best use of each other's time. And also ensure that the appearance of the authors on the final manuscript is agreed very early on in the project, because these are very, very small but very important things when it comes to publication. It is also important to agree to be someone who has the time and the inclination to respond to publishers which will generally not be very interesting, but which will determine whether your manuscript gets published quickly or not. So queries would probably be around copyright matters. They might be around the appearance of some of your figures. For instance, maybe something is not quite clear and the publisher wants to check something with you. So they're small matters, but they need a quick response. So that's an important matter to decide. And also, as in any team, you will want to agree on who's going to be the leader. Now, about writing the case study itself, here are a few general tips to help you along with the process. The general convention is to write in the past tense. The conceit, even if it is a disguised case, is that the event has already happened. So we're looking at an issue or problem which took place in the past, and we are considering how it could have been solved or tackled. And then also you have the benefit of hindsight, because once you are discussing the case study with your group, once they have had a go at it and presented their solutions, you can actually look at what actually happened and analyze that as well. There are a list of WH questions there which will help you with your opening paragraph or opening set of paragraphs. It's important to make sure that you've got all the information necessary to build a clear picture for your readers and for other people who will be using your case study. The case study is a resource and it is going to be used by other people, so it needs to be user-friendly, and answering these WH questions at the beginning of the case will help it be so. Then in the body of the case, usually we prefer authors to narrate the issue in chronological order, setting out the general macroeconomic background and also, well, all of the PESTLE background really, as and if necessary, so the political, the social, technological, environmental, so whatever is relevant to what you are writing about. Remember also that the political, social and economic background might be very familiar to you because you have been steeped in that environment for a while perhaps, but it might not be as familiar for people who are outside of that but who might want to use your case study. So it's important to put a bit of that in. Any organizational background and also the details of the specific issue faced. It's important to you know, be as true to the real world as possible. There's always more than one side to the story, so it would be good to communicate that in your case study. In the concluding paragraph, avoid the temptation of actually giving the solution. You know, you want the group that's going to tackle the case to actually come up with some solutions. So just give a summary, maybe raise a few new questions. So according to Derek Abel, these are 10 indicators of a good teaching or learning case. So it's a case, not a story. So there has to be an issue, some sort of meaty issue there that's going to lead to some sort of learning or knowledge sharing. It needs to be worthwhile, it needs to be pertinent, it has to be something that is meaningful in today's world and is meaningful to the group you're engaging with. Voyage of discovery, I guess that is the learning voyage that your case enables the group to take. If it's controversial, then that stimulates more discussion. But obviously know your audience and know your surroundings. Of course, we ask people to use their judgment. There should be enough data there to tackle the problem, but as implied in the previous sections, we would ask authors not to solve the problem for the group in the actual case study, because then there's nothing for the group to do and they are deprived of a learning opportunity there. It's good to put a personal voice to the case study without that making it impenetrable and difficult to read. And here are some common pitfalls. Well, we receive case studies, well, we receive research articles which are sent to us saying that they are case studies, but in fact they're not, they're research articles. So the distinction between the two needs to be very clear in authors' minds. And we also receive case studies that have never been tried out on a group. So you can tell that they don't lead to fruitful discussions and fruitful learning experiences. Case studies which are biased, case studies which solve the problem for the group, case studies which don't follow the author guidelines and don't fit into the actual collection they're sent to, case studies which don't address the objectives that have been set out at the beginning, and ones which lack the permissions documentation. Now let's have a look at teaching notes. These, as I said, make or break your case study. And there's a few pointers there on what they should include. So a bit of a case summary, an indication of who the audience is, what the learning objectives are, and also a plan with sessions, with the session time broken down by topics, which will help the instructor or leader use this case study in their environment. Also some suggested student or learner assignments or tasks, and the description of the beginning and the end of the session. The discussion questions should be challenging, and there should be sample answers, multiple sample answers, not just one answer, because the more challenging and stimulating the discussion, the wider the range of answers that are going to be available. And as said before, including a bit of an update on what actually happened, that will then lend itself to further analysis. And the teaching note can include supporting material, links to videos, further reading, and so on. So a teaching note that doesn't fulfill its aim is one that does not actually help the instructor or leader or educator sufficiently. So one where the instructor needs to go away and find out more, one that is not detailed enough for the time that the case should take to deal with, and also one that presents answers which students could not have come up with from the information given within the case. Also one that is built around the model rather than around the world. So the case method lends itself to preparing communities for real-life challenges. If an author has written a case study because they want to use a particular model, rather because they want to look at how a particular problem can be solved, then that's not a good starting point. And sample answers are important, as is analysis and lessons learned. I've put in a link there to the EMCS author guidelines, which are going to open now. Right. Well, it looks like I can't share this with you. Okay, so I would recommend, in order not to hold everyone up, that when you get copies of these slides, that you have a look at these author guidelines. And they're quite standard to all peer-reviewed publications, really. So you've got information about what we expect from in the manuscript, and also information about copyright, plagiarism, things which I will cover in later slides as well. Okay, so plagiarism and referencing are concerns for publishers today because plagiarism is easier to do, harder to detect at peer review, although software does help to detect it when we actually receive the manuscripts here. And it's the same with all international publishers, really. So we do spot checks on manuscripts that we receive to see whether there are any similarities with what has already been published. And if we see over 4% similarity with something that has already been published, and we don't see any referencing to the original, then we raise an alarm and we investigate further. So these are things to be aware of when you're preparing your work. There's some links there to some general information that you can read at your leisure. Also, a related matter is the permission to reuse content which has not been created by you. So this happens mostly with tables, figures. So for example, you know, if there's a well-known model and you want to put that in the teaching note because you think it will be useful, many authors include a figure that they have copied from another source, and they think that just by including the reference that is enough. However, we also require copyright permission, so the copyright holders of that original figure or table need to be contacted, and we need to know they're happy for us to actually include that table or that figure in our publication. This sometimes confuses authors. We realize it is rather confusing, especially, for instance, if you have material which is available for everyone to download online, but available for download, open access, does not mean also available for reuse for commercial purposes. So if you're publishing with a commercial publisher, you need to consider whether you have permission for the material that you're including. Okay, so have a look at the best practice guidelines there, and also the originality guidelines, and keep these things in mind when you're publishing, because these things can really hold up your manuscript, which is a shame after you've put in so much hard work into putting it together. Also, if you are reusing a figure of your own, but you have relinquished copyright to another publisher, then you still need to ask copyright permission from that original publisher, which kind of goes against people's instincts, really, because if they are the creators of that figure, then they wonder why they have to ask for permission. We've included a link here to a form which is the consent to publish form. So this is the form that the representative from the organization or community that you have written about needs to complete. And we urge authors to ensure that they are communicating with someone who is in sufficient authority, has sufficient authority to be able to represent the company and the company's views. Okay. Okay. Also, before you submit your case study, keep in mind that it's going to be online and that you need to reach users by being searchable and findable as much as possible. So this depends on the keywords and the title that you use. Make sure that you choose your keywords and title carefully, and that you use known words and ones which actually are used by the community that you want to engage with. And the keywords will also need to be found in the abstract for your case study. For instance, for the emerging markets case study, collection, we ask authors to prepare structured abstracts. And we have included there the headings of the structured abstract that we ask authors to fill. And this helps authors ensure that they are including in their abstract all the points, all the main points that a reader wants to see or wants to know about as they access a case study. And again, there's a link to more information about that, which you can have a look at in your own time. We've included a copy of a good abstract, which makes it clear what the case study is about, which you can have a look at. This is quite a well-downloaded case study, so the author has obviously ticked the right boxes there. And then finally, before you actually let go of your manuscript, make sure that it is checked for errors. So you don't want errors like this to be included in your manuscript. And it's always good to use your colleagues and your network as well. Ask a friend or a colleague to have a look at your work, because we always get too close to it. Apart from the cosmetic side of it, it's important, and it's more important actually, to check whether the case actually works as an educational or knowledge sharing tool. So ask someone else to use it and see if they need any further support. If not, then you've ticked all the right boxes. Okay, so here's what happens to the manuscript after you have worked on it, you submit it, and it goes into the editorial peer review. So we just included a few points there about what the editorial team actually does. In our collection, we have an editor-in-chief, we've got regional editors, we've got editorial advisory board members and reviewers, and together they all participate in the peer review process. The regional editors take care of a particular region and work with reviewers from that region, and they give feedback to authors on their work. Now, not all case publishers do this. Not all case publishers have a peer review system, but we think it's important to support authors, because ultimately this is a mentoring kind of process as well, helping authors improve their case study through the peer review system. Also, the editorial team works on collection in terms of developing it and promoting it, and also finding partners to work with as well. Your case study will go through the publisher that will have a production team, and the production team will add value to the case study. Again, this is not the case with all publishers, but with us you would have the benefit of proofreading, sometimes a detailed proofread for particular cases, as well as text setting. You would have a DOE number applied to your manuscript, which would make it individual and searchable online. And also it would be ensured perpetuity, really, because once it's in our databases, then it cannot be destroyed because it's protected. And we see a loop basically in terms of who publishes will then come from the same type of community that uses the case study, and so on and so forth. So basically I've covered the points which we need to consider before actually submitting. Emma's going to now talk through the review process really, and what happens to the manuscript after submission. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Victoria. So once you've submitted your case, I'll just let you know what's going to happen and which people will be looking after at each stage. So the editorial office will do an initial check of your case and check that you've included all of the permissions and that it fits within the scope of the collection. The editor for your region will then identify and contact reviewers and send your case out to be reviewed. Once the editor receives the reviewer's comments and recommendations, they'll then recommend a decision, and the editor-in-chief will make the final decision on your case and contact you. So you could be advised of one of four possible decisions. It will either be accepted, and do bear in mind that very few cases, if any, will be accepted without having any review. So that's quite rare to happen in the first instance. So if you get asked for revision, try to remember that it is good news. You're now in the publishing cycle, and remember that every published case is revised at least once. Try not to take umbrage against the comments. They might seem sharp, but they're not personal. You will have had a blind review with Emerald, so the comments are definitely not personal, and they are meant to help you to improve your case and improve the quality. So try to bear that in mind, and don't panic, and just try to take on board the feedback. How do you revise your case? Acknowledge the editor and set a revision deadline. Think about a deadline that you can realistically meet. If there's anything that you disagree with in the comments, then don't feel like that you just have to accept that and go away. That, please feel free to explain why to the editor and enter into a discussion if there's something which you disagree with. If there's any of the comments that you're not sure about, if you don't understand what they mean, or if anything seems conflicting, then again do contact the editor, who will be happy to clarify that for you. It saves both of your time if you're clear about what changes need to be made. I recommend consulting with your colleagues and co-authors and get their views as well on whether or not they feel that you've met the points before you resubmit. And try to ensure that you meet the revision deadline, otherwise it is inconvenient for the people involved and it might hold up the publication of your case. It's also a good idea to attach a covering letter and identify point by point how you've met the revision requests. It saves the editor and the reviewers a lot of time if they can see, without having to read through the full case again, exactly where and what pages and paragraphs that you've made the changes. It'll make it much quicker for them to check what revisions you've done and to come back to you with a decision. And as well, if there's any comments which you disagree with, then you can mention this at this point as well in your covering letter and explain why you think that a change will not have improved the case, and that kind of thing. So what do you do if your case is rejected? Well, firstly, don't give up. Just remember that everyone has been rejected at least once. Ask why. Usually you'll be given detailed comments from the editor, but if there's anything you want clarifying or more detail on, then please ask, and they are happy to help you. And remember to listen to what's being said and use it as an opportunity to improve your case. Try again, do make the improvements and resubmit. If you do your homework and target your case closely to the collection and to your audience, there is a good chance that it will be published if you submit the improved version. And keep trying, don't give up. I know it might not seem like it at the time, but there are some positive outcomes of rejection. It is an incentive for you to act on the comments and improve your work, and you'll receive valuable feedback from somebody who is an expert in your field. It's also a good experience of how the system works, and you can also, be in dialogue with an editor and contacts in your field. Once you've been accepted, then you'll deserve a big congratulations for all your hard work. Bear in mind that you probably will have done at least one revision by then. Just a typical comment from one of our editors who says that he's not accepted a single paper on first submission. So just to reiterate that, if you are asked for a revision, it's because the editor sees something good in your case and thinks with some polishing that, you know, it could be eventually be published. So now that you've done all that hard work, you want people to read and use your case, so you'll need to promote it. You want to support educators and trainers globally. You want to raise your own profile and that of your institution. Promoting your work might help you to attract collaborators for future work and perhaps research funding, and also might give you opportunities in a consulting role or perhaps with the media. So some tips on how you can do that. Use your network to spread the word about your research. Post a link to your case on listservs. Speak to your institution press office or perhaps an association press office. They might perhaps be able to send a press release on your behalf. And you could link to your case in your email signature and attract attention to it that way. It's quite a good tip to contact the authors in your reference list. So they'll be very pleased to know that you've referenced them, and they might in turn cite your work or forward the link on your behalf. It's a good idea to hone your media skills and brand image. If you've got something which is particularly impactful, then to alert the media, and also use a website and hone your own brand image. And you can ask the publisher to provide you with leaflets which you can display around your institution or take with you to conferences. Other additional opportunities which you might want to be involved with might be reviewing, publishing journal articles or writing a book, joining an editorial advisory board or contributing to an editorship. So if you do want any further details on any opportunities in this area, then please feel free to contact either of me or Victoria. And just a summary of the main points. It's really difficult to write a case without identifying your objectives, so try to have a clear idea of what they are from the start. It's imperative that you develop a good relationship with the organisation or community that you're writing about, to make sure that they're happy for you to publish the work that you do, and also that you get correct and relevant and as much information as possible. You're provided with really in-depth author guidelines, so try not to think of it as a chore. It's really useful information, and it's hopefully helps you through common pitfalls that we see with authors. And use your network. Don't be afraid to speak to the publisher and editor and ask for advice and feedback, and also your colleagues and supervisors and kind of thing. We're all really happy to give you advice and feedback, so don't be afraid to contact us. Just let you know as well about a few useful resources. The first link is to the Emerald Emerging Markets case studies homepage, so you can access the author guidelines from there, and you can read some sample cases, and you'll find a case submission checklist which will be useful. You can also access some guides to help you with writing a case and writing your teaching notes, and we also have a book published on writing case studies, so you can find the link there as well. You also might be interested in applying for one of our case writing competitions and winning some money towards your research and potentially being published. So we have 3 competitions which are open at the moment: the AIB MENA competition, our international case writing competition, and our CMAN case writing competition. You'll find details of each of them on those links, and also additional information to help you to write your case. So if you want any additional information about any of those, then please feel free to contact me. finally, talk to us and let us know if there's anything additional that we can do to help you, and use our case studies collection. We're happy to answer any questions now. If there's anything you don't get a chance to ask, you can contact either of us at a later date. And finally, please write for us. Thank you so much for listening, and we're happy to take any questions.
Victoria and Emma, thank you very much for your presentation. Very clear. The sound was every now and then a little bit off, but overall it came over quite clear. And I would also like to ask all the participants, the attendees, to come with questions. And the first one that I have is to open this Q&A session now. There are various publishers and distributors who disseminate case studies internationally. What's the difference between them, and what are the benefits of using Emerald?
Thank you, Dennis, for that question. Well, yes, there are many distributors. So you have the well-known ones like Ivy and Harvard, and the European Case Clearinghouse as well. And then you also have institutional repositories for cases written by faculty members in those institutions, and those cases are then used by the faculty there. So what distinguishes our collection from these? Well, firstly, it's the regional focus. We already publish, as a publisher, we have 25 titles with a focus on emerging economies. And we wanted to enhance our provision and expertise on emerging markets by offering this educational resource. So we're very much catering for people interested in the most exciting economies of the day, and we would like to showcase work by authors, educators, trainers within these regions. So there's the regional side, which distinguishes us. Also, what distinguishes us from some of the other providers is that we have quite a flexible policy, really, in terms of the formats and lengths that we accept for publication. So, you know, a case study in our collection could range between 1,000 to 12,000 words in length. So we're trying to make sure that we're catering for as wide a range of tastes as possible and a wider range of contexts as possible. We have quite short turnaround times in terms of review, so our content is current, perhaps a little bit more current than more established providers, and we actually provide review, which is not the case for all of the providers. So, you know, some service providers focus on the actual dissemination. They are not there to give feedback to authors. They just want to share the work as widely as possible. So an author who works with us actually gets some feedback on their work. So those are just a few points, really.
Okay, that's good to hear. If your review would be negative, if you would be rejected, that's one of the questions I get right now. How many times can you resubmit?
We don't really have a limit. I guess if it was the case that we felt that a submission kept coming back and, you know, it was just a bad fit, we would advise the author to have a look at a range of alternatives. So, you know, as we have many other titles, and also because we are also aware of other case study publishers as well, we would help the author to find a better home for their case study, really. You know, very rarely do we have authors who keep sending a submission over and over again.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand. And if you would get a positive answer, but you need to rewrite some pieces, what's normally the time, the lag between your first submission and the actual publication?
So in terms of average time spans, our latest averages have been that the time from initial submission to publication is 5.5 months. So that's 2.5 months for the peer review process to be completed. And then there's 3 months when the production team are working on the case studies. So it could be less than 3 months, but we say 3 months in order not to disappoint any authors.
Okay.
So it's 5.5 months on average at the moment. However, we would like to reduce that, and one of our developments for the near future will be to start working on a bit of an early citing tool, really, which will enable us to publish the case studies in their raw form, in the form that they are actually submitted. So before production really have actually got their hands on them, we would publish that raw version, and then that would be replaced 3 months down the line by the actual manuscript which the production team would have worked on. So the one with the emerald logo on it, so the professional looking one. But the advantage of early publication is that, you know, you get your work out there as soon as possible, even if it doesn't look as pretty as it does when it is finally published in the text set format.
Yeah, no, I understand, and it can also be, can that also be used as a form of peer review?
Not currently. We don't have post-publication review at the moment. We don't have the functionality for that. But I imagine as time goes by, it's something that as a publisher we will have more tools to enable, because it's on our radar.
Okay. I get a question in from Vladimir. He says it is about the copyrights and the getting permission for the use of figures and tables. The IPCC is doing the climate change outlooks, and their figures and tables are used everywhere. And he's wondering, for scientific publishing, do you need to write the IPCC for every republishing of a table or something in their reports?
It depends what their policy is. So I believe the World Bank, for instance, has a policy where it allows you to republish as long as you reference where the content was initially published. So some organizations which are there to provide information to the general public are quite liberal with their copyright. So, you know, they will have a section on their website, perhaps terms of use, or a copyright section where they will articulate what their stance is on copyright. So as long as that section tells you that, yes, you can go ahead, reuse this content, just put in a reference to us there, then that's all right. That's all you need to tell the publisher. It might be worth including a note about that with your final submission, so that then you don't get questions from the publisher after you've submitted, because they might not be aware of the situation.
Okay, so it doesn't just depend on Emerald, it also depends on what the copyright settings for a certain report are by the organization you're lending from, like in this case, in the question, the IPCC. Okay.
That's right.
A question comes in from Chanti Sam, and he asks, when you are asked, for example, to make revisions by the editor, are those comments that you get from the editor, are they set in stone? Or is there a possibility to have some level of discussion on them?
Definitely, if there's anything that you don't agree with, then do go back to the editor and explain why you think that it won't improve your manuscript, or perhaps there's a particular reason why you left something out or why you displayed something in a certain way. It's definitely open for discussion, but just try to be objective when you're looking at the comments that you've received. Yeah, but it is open for discussion, definitely.
Okay, that's good to hear. I have myself one more question. If there are any attendees who want to ask another question, please do, because this is my last question and this is your last chance as attendees to ask questions. My question is, can we submit cases that have already been published elsewhere? For example, these days everyone publishes online, so I can imagine that people that submit cases already have the case somewhere put online.
Yes, yes. This is something we encounter quite regularly. We generally ask authors to take down versions of the final, if they have the final version online, and we realize that that is the case upon submission, then we ask the authors to take that down, and then they can put it up again after we have published the case study, with a full reference as to where the case study was published by Emerald or by whoever the publisher is. Now, in terms of, for example, whether say we get questions from authors who have used a clearinghouse for their case study. They may have retained copyright for their case study, but it's already being disseminated. That is a case study we can't really accept because it already appeared somewhere else. So we, in our author guidelines, we ask authors to only submit to us case studies which have not been published elsewhere, or have not appeared elsewhere. That's quite difficult to manage sometimes. The benefit for authors is that this enables us to keep copyright, given that authors are asked to sign that over in most cases to us. And it means we can protect the author from plagiarism. So if the author realizes, say a few months after we have published their case, that another author has stolen their work and has used it without reference, without acknowledgement, in another piece of work that has been published, then we can support the author who has published with us in their investigation and also in their potential discussion with the offending person and publisher as well. So we can we can help authors in that way. So it's kind of a bit of a trade, really. Us having ownership of the case study or the material means that then we can work on behalf of the author. But it does pose a few restrictions on the author, but not too many, because then once the case is published, then the author can do what they please with their final version of their case, as long as they reference where it was published originally.
Okay, okay. Oh, that's very clear, and it's good to hear that Emerald helps the author as well if there would be some copyright issues arising by others during the publication process. Last question is coming from Chanti-san, and it's a good question because we are here in Asia, and most people are not native English speakers, and they have English as the second language. Is there some help in the writing process for the non-native English speakers who want to write for teaching case studies?
Okay, that is a good question. The current provision we have at the moment is twofold. We have language editors who can help authors prepare their manuscript before submission, and that is a paid-for service currently. Then there is also a free service for case studies authors whose manuscript has been accepted for publication, but which needs further polishing. So the service here would be a detailed proofread at production stage. The author might be contacted during that time to clarify certain points about the case study. So our message to our reviewers is generally, do not reject a case study on the basis of the language or the standard of the language that is being used. Look at the ideas, look at whether it's a well put together piece of work which will get students or learners or communities engaged in the ideas. If there are some grammar mistakes or if there are some spelling mistakes, and that can be taken care of here by Emerald staff or Emerald associates who will clean up the manuscript before it gets published. So those are our current services. This is actually something we're looking to develop further. So perhaps a couple of years down the line we'll have more to offer.
Okay, thank you. But it's good to hear that even though at some point in the publishing supply chain it is a paid service, it's good to know that it's there. Now a really last question. I just got one more coming in from Navrai Pradhan. You also, I think, answered it already partly in the presentation, but he asks regarding copyright permission, what is regarded as a valid permission? And I understand you have a certain format for this, but if you already got permission in another format, would that be accepted as well?
We would need to look at it really, and we'd need to pass it by our rights team to ensure that all the clauses that we have in our form are actually covered by the form that we are given. And also the permission needs to be to Emerald as well as the author, or to the publisher as well as the author. Permission to the author is not sufficient because that doesn't cover the use of the case study in a collection that's going to be disseminated internationally. So those are things that we kind of look out for.
Yeah, no, I understand, because the original permission might have been given just to use it in a small setting in a university, while you then after that suddenly start using it for an international publication.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like to close the Q&A session with this last question. I hope that that all attendees enjoyed the webinar, and I would like to thank Victoria and Emma for this clear presentation. My apologies for the sound quality every now and then. There seems to be a little twitch every now and then with respect to the sound quality, and my apologies for that. The PowerPoint slides will be put online, and also a recording of this webinar. So if you would like to review this later on, then that's possible. Again, Victoria and Emma, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for having us. Yes, and I'm sorry if the sound problem was from our side. Apologies to everyone. And yes, it's been a pleasure working with the Sea Change community, and we wish you all the best with your endeavors. So thank you very much for having us.
Okay, that's very good to hear. And I would like to wish everyone here in Asia a very good evening, and to everyone in Europe a very good working day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.